Hi there, my name is Nicole with morningchores.com, and today is the second video in our three-part video series about everything orchards. The previous video was all about choosing an orchard location. Today's video, I'm going to demonstrate how to plant a fruit tree and give you some easy tips along the way. If you missed the first video, I will have it linked in the description box below, as well as some helpful articles with some extended information from what I'm going to be sharing here in today's video. In the previous video, I went through in depth on where I decided to choose my orchard location. So today we're going to go into the steps on how to plant those fruit trees. So I will be demonstrating how to plant apple trees and pear trees, and they're very similar in how you plant them. So if you're planting anything different, I would highly recommend that you do your research first. Supply list is pretty simple here. All you need for this job is a couple of really good shovels. A pickaxe is helpful if you're planning on planting these trees in an established yard where there's sod or grass. Also, you want a tape measure, maybe some flags to mark the area where you want to plant your trees. And then we also need some composted soil, peat moss, and mulch. And lastly, you're going to need some buckets or a hose so that you can water these trees after you're done planting. The next step is proper tree placement. It's very important that you follow recommended measurements for tree spacing. And fruit trees need ample space, not only for good airflow, but also you need to take in consideration that they're going to grow, they're going to get bigger, and so you need space to allow that. So every tree is different, and I highly recommend that you buy your trees from a local, reputable nursery, because more than likely they're going to sell trees that do well in your area, and they should have all the information that you need in order to plant them properly. So I took my measuring tape and some flags, and I marked out exactly where I wanted those trees to be, so that way when I went to go dig my holes, I was doing it in the right place. You don't want to go to all that work digging a hole only to find that it's not the correct spacing. Once we have our location of trees in place, our measurements are all done, and we're for sure that's where we want to dig our hole, it's time to start digging. And this is probably the hardest part of the whole process, so make sure you have the right tools for the job, because the right tools always make the job a little bit easier. If you're planting in a yard where there's established sod, as I did, it really does help to have a pickaxe. It's not necessary, but it really helps save your soil so that you can use that and put it back into the hole later. My husband did this part because it was really hard for me to use the pickaxe. I really did try, and I probably could have gotten the hang of it eventually, but he was able to do it much more quickly than I could. So he took care of that, and I did more of the digging part. To begin digging your hole, you want to start with a 4-foot radius around your flag just to get you started. And the size of your hole really depends on the size of the tree. And the nursery where you purchased your trees from should be able to help you out with this. My nursery gave me a couple of sheets of paper with some really good information on there and instructions on what to do. The most important thing I learned about digging a hole is that you don't want to just dig straight down. You kind of want to dig almost like a saucer, like a teacup. You want it to kind of taper down instead of just digging straight down. And the reason is because this is going to ensure good drainage. You don't want to get a downpour or heavy rainfall and have water sitting in the bottom of that hole. Even if you have the tree in there and all that soil, it can still sit in there and cause root rot, which is something we don't want to happen. So by tapering the hole down like a saucer, that ensures that the water will drain away from the roots properly. This is also part of the process where your tape measure really comes in handy, because you'll think you're done digging the hole, and then you measure it and you realize that you're not done. You got to go a few more inches deeper or a few more inches wider. So it was really important to use that tape measure and just keep checking and just make sure that you're getting those holes the right size for your tree, because there's nothing worse than digging this hole, getting the tree in there only to find that it's not deep enough or it's not big enough. So you just want to kind of measure twice, cut once. You know that little saying that a lot of woodworkers use? Well, it actually applies here as well. So make sure you measure a couple of times to make sure you have the hole just right before you put that tree in there. Now that our hole is dug, it's the fun part, at least for me, and that is putting the tree in the hole. So I had to cut away the plastic bases because they were just too hard for me to get off by myself. So I cut those away, and then it always helps to break up the root system a little bit. You want to do this just because it will help ensure that those roots spread out and take hold in the soil. So just take your fingers and kind of break it up just a little bit before you put the tree into the hole. Once I got the tree in the hole, I used some of my soil that I dug out of the hole to put underneath the tree to make sure it was level. I was trying to get it as level as I could before I filled the hole with soil. Another tip that I'd like to share that we read about was some people recommend that you plant the tree with the notch where the tree was originally grafted so that the notch is facing north. I don't know how helpful this is to the tree, but we decided to do a little experiment, and what we did is we planted this tree, this one, and that one with the notch facing north, and this tree back in the corner, the notch is facing south. So we should see as time goes on whether that was actually helpful or not at all. Now that I have my tree positioned just right, I have the node pointing north and I have my tree level. Now it's time to fill up that hole with soil. So what I found recommended quite a bit was to mix 1 part peat moss with 5 parts composted soil. So I just did this in my wheelbarrow. I mixed up the soil really well. Once you get to the top, you kind of want to taper the soil down away from the trunk. You don't want to build up the soil so that it's pointing or sloping downward towards the trunk. You want it to slope away from the trunk. And you also don't want to bury the tree too high either. And again, my nursery gave me a sheet all about this with a diagram, and I'll also link some articles in the description box below that gives you more information on this, or if you need some pictures. But as you can see in my video, I kind of tried to taper the soil down kind of away from the trunk. Once I get the soil exactly how I like it, where it's packed down, not too firm but not too loose, and I have enough in there, it's time to add the last finishing touch, and that is the mulch. And the mulch is really easy to layer on top. You want a couple of good inches, like 2 to 3 inches. Some people even vouch for 4 to 5 inches. But the key is, again, you don't want to layer it so that water pools near the trunk when you get a downpour. So you want to make sure that you do it in such a way that the water rolls away from the trunk. We want it to go down into the soil, not pool around the top of the trunk. And that's really the basics of planting a fruit tree, at least an apple and a pear tree. I hope that today's video is helpful for you, and I hope that you found it enjoyable. I will have all of the extra articles and information linked in the description box below. There's also some really good articles at morningchores.com on orchards and orchard care, and those will be down there as well. Stay tuned for the 3rd video in our orchard series, where I'll be discussing how to stake your fruit tree so that it grows nice and straight, as well as watering and maintenance tips. Hope you guys have a wonderful week, and we'll see you on the next one.